Hi, I'm BJ Counsel, founder of UN50. As a retired police officer and executive, this job led me to my life's purpose. I served humans experiencing varying levels of crisis, trying to get jobs, housing, educational needs, health care, but due to personal barriers or overworked systems, these humans aren't able to obtain life's simple goal of just being stable. I believe if basic human needs are met, the need for law enforcement interactions are lessened.
So welcome everybody back to UN50. We really appreciate those who are regular listeners. Thank you. And those who are not, it's UN50. My name is BJ. And UN50 is a business, and what we do is teach individuals how to safely interact with law enforcement. The information is good for all persons, but obviously Black and Brown communities are who mostly come to my workshops. But we use the podcast not to just talk about policing and interactions with the Black and Brown communities or those types of things. We look at other things that are the root causes as to why those interactions with law enforcement actually occur. And trying to help out, figure out mental health, education, all those things that I believe and research shows sometimes that's why people actually interact with law enforcement. So thank you again to those who are visiting for the first time and those who are, usually and always my supporters. So thank you. So tonight we have Melissa Radcliff. And she actually, I met her at local reentry council here in Durham. I had just started the business. Well, I started the business in 2015 and I met her around 17, 18. And so she does work, and I'm gonna let her talk about that a little bit in corrections, working with incarcerated persons as they're coming back out with their children to help that transition and resources. And I'm gonna let her tell you a little bit about that. And then we'll kind of get into why I believe this is important for our returning or reentrants, as some folks are starting to call them, coming back to the community. So Melissa Radcliff, thank you very much for joining me. And so go ahead and tell us a little bit about you. We'll have your bio on the podcast, but I kind of want you to kind of tell them who you are.
Yeah, well, thank you for the chance to be here, and thanks to your audience for, as you said, the new folks, but folks who've been with you the entire time. And I feel like you kind of glossed over that. Like the way we met was we were both at several meetings over the course of time. We thought, gosh, we keep seeing each other. We probably should introduce each other, right? Like this doesn't seem right to be in the community, all the same meetings. Where's the connection here? And so I'm glad that one or both of us took the lead on that. So my name is Melissa Radcliff. I run a statewide program called Our Children's Place. We're part of Coastal Horizons. We're based in Durham. Coastal is based in Wilmington. And our focus is really on how communities can support children who have an incarcerated parent, whether that's jail or prison, or in some cases both, and children who have parents who are returning. And we try to be pretty broad about that because we know for some children, parents are coming back to live with them. For some, it may be living with them for the first time. And we know for some parents, they're going to live somewhere else, either permanently or temporarily. So being pretty broad with defining returning and what that means, but really thinking about how communities, the role each of us can play around recognizing children, supporting them, encouraging them to share their stories, and really recognizing the fact that lots of folks go to jail or prison, but we forget that many of them have children and many of them are minor age children. So what can we do to support them? So glad to be here this evening.
Yeah, so a little bit of background on your experience in doing this. I mean, you were doing stuff before you did. I mean, you've been with Our Children's Place for how long now?
Yeah, it's 17 and a half years, which I joke, like adults have jobs for 17 years, right? So I guess that maybe means I'm moving into adulthood. I don't know. And I started, like, I wasn't someone who woke up one day and said, gosh, I'd like to run a program focused on children of incarcerated parents. I worked with crime victims for quite some time in a couple of different states. And then this opportunity came up and I said, I don't know anything about women in prison and their children. And the folks interviewing me said, the issue is that no one does. And we really think that your experience, at least being in the court system as a court advocate, you at least understand how things work or the way they're supposed to work. We think you'd be a great addition to this team. And at first I said no. And then they came back and said, are you sure? And I said, well, I'll give it a test drive. for about 6 months. We'll see how that works. And clearly it did, because it's 17 and a half years later. So,
Still there.
yeah.
I didn't know this until I read your bio. You sent us the bio. I mean, obviously I know you, but I didn't know this part. Talk about this FRESH and what the acronyms are for FRESH, because is that kind of new? Because I'm just.
It is,
Okay.
and we always have to have an acronym, right? We can never just have a name. It has to stand for something. So FRESH is Family Reentry Support and Help, and it's a grant that actually is through the state. It's federal grant that the Department of Adult Correction has, and actually that grant was submitted about the week that the world shut down in March of 2020. So the planning for it, we had a much different, I don't say much different, but definitely a different thought process in mind at the time. And then, of course, the grant was awarded and we were in the middle of the pandemic. So it's really focused and building on the folks at the prison and Raleigh saying, we think we're doing some great work around reentry, but we're not talking at all about children and families. And what does that mean? And so FRESH is designed to say, hey, how do we think about children and families with as part of the overall reentry process? So we're in 5 prisons doing a parenting class, individual case management, and then we're slowly starting to set up what we call special visits. So they're individual visits where families not having to visit with a million other people in the visiting space. But also as part of that, we have done 1 round of training with staff at 14 reentry facilities across the state. And we've helped them redesign their visiting spaces to make them more child friendly. And there was actually some money attached to that. We know sometimes that's what helps people motivate, is to say, thank you we want to do this, but you've also given us the resources to be able to do it. So we did a bunch of site visits. We created a checklist for them. And then we've been working with them to say, what do you think is going to make your visiting space more child friendly? So that's sort of FRESH in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I volunteer. When we met, she told me what she was doing, and I had just kind of started the business, and I don't know whether I said yes immediately, but I was definitely intrigued with it. And then, I got in there, and it's like one of the best things that I do. I go into just one facility, Orange Correctional Facility here in North Carolina at Hillsborough, and I do my dog and pony show. I do my UN50 as to how to safely interact, because returning citizens, usually more often than not, the first person besides family they're going to meet is either probation officer or police officer, one of the two. And so and I kind of talked to them about that. And as a police officer, if unfortunately BJ gets out of prison, and 2 months after she gets out of prison, my break-ins go up. So I'm coming to visit as a police officer. I'm coming to visit BJ. Nothing personal. That's just business. And so we talk about that. So I kind of want to first kind of talk about that a little bit as to what you saw, or why you think what I was doing would be important as part of your resource package and then we'll talk about the types of resources you take in and what that looks like for people getting ready to get back out.
Yeah, so we got involved with the pre-release course at Orange Correctional quite a few years ago. I think it was one of these things that folks have been working on it, and then volunteer opportunities, of course, and other people came on. And so I got involved with it. And at first it was 6 sessions, and we did that for a bit. And then finally went back to former leadership of the prison and said, we'd love to keep doing this, but it needs to be more frequent. We can't just do it once a year, and it needs to be more than 6 sessions. It's unrealistic to expect that in 6 sessions, you're going to cover everything you need to know about pre-release, not even re-entry, but just pre-release, and sort of differentiating between the two, that this is really thinking about what do you think you're going to need? You, BJ, being different than me, Melissa, than different than Chris, before you even start to connect with those resources, identifying what you need. And my understanding was the pre-release course had been much longer in the past, almost like a semester. And folks said that was actually too long because it was so much information and not a chance to do anything with it. So we tried for 6 sessions, did that for a bit. And then the facility said, okay, you can do 12 sessions. So it gave us more wiggle room to say, yeah, we need to keep doing employment and education and all of that. But let's also think about kind of the human pieces of this. So let's bring in someone from the library, and let's bring in someone from DSS and about voting. And let's bring in someone who's talking about the thing that nobody else is talking about, is when you leave here, you are going to interact with law enforcement. That's just a reality of living in life, right? Whether it's you're in a car accident, something happens, and like you said, you get pulled over. And so when I learned more about this, I thought, gosh, it makes sense. And it helps us to push the envelope a bit and say, let's talk about the thing that nobody else wants to talk about. And it's been interesting when we do our quick little evaluations. I always say, were you surprised that BJ was here? Because I want people to think about, yeah, I was surprised. I didn't think former law enforcement would be standing in front of us, being so honest. And we always say at the beginning, it's not our job to make you like the police. Like that's not, if you have a change of perception, that's great. But really, we want to do exactly what you've talked about, is to get folks home safely. And so for me, it's one of the best sessions because it's one of the most interactive, because it challenges people. It's real, right? It's here's the video from something that took place 2 weeks ago. It's not, 10 years ago, this is what happened. It's like, this is what's happening. The fact that you've been willing to answer some pretty tough questions, that you're not defensive. I think they're trying to push a bit to see if we can get her to be defensive. And then I think it's also a great way then. So we've started to bring in probation, which we've never done before. So I think there's also a way to connect, like, the speaker next week's talking about conflict management. I wonder how that ties in with my interaction with law enforcement, which ties in with probation, which ties in with other things. So it's not just today's session is this and tomorrow's is this, there's a connection with all of these sessions.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the positive plug. I definitely checks in the mail. I know I was going to look up some stats, but I kind of want to talk about, I think you may have just answered that as to how these resources are chosen, because it's about what are you going to do? What are you going to need? And you're doing that. So I kind of want you to go a little bit more in details about what that looks like and why, and how has that been, have you gotten some feedback after persons have left? And the statistic I was going to look up, and I know I can find it, but how statistically, I'm looking for? Prisoners, children, how many children have family members who are incarcerated? Because you do like 1 in 10 children have X amount. So what is that? Do you know that?
Yeah. So nationally, it's 1 in 28 children.
Wow.
For North Carolina, it's almost 21,000. The Department of Adult Correction runs an annual report for us, and it's a point in time count, so it's on a particular day. So I always say it's a number with an asterisk because it's almost 21,000, and we've been tracking that now for probably close to 10 years. And so you can see some ups and downs. The numbers of children went down during the pandemic, which makes sense. People were being released from prison at a higher rate, so the numbers went down overall. Makes sense the children numbers went down. That number doesn't include kids whose parents are in jail or, sitting in Butner in Granville County or in a different state prison, but in a different state. So I always say it's the best number we have, but it's not the best. And for the pre-release course, we actually, when the men first show up for the class, we ask them a whole series of questions. Are you a veteran? Do you have children? Are you going to have to register as a sex offender? What county you're going back to? Because what we try to do is, if you're going back to Mecklenburg County, you don't need resources from 99 other counties, right? That's overwhelming. Right. Let's give you the good resources from Mecklenburg and go from there. If you're not a veteran, you don't need the whole handbook from the VA. But if you are, we want to make sure you have that. Right. The sex offender question, that's just, you tell me. I'm not going to put it on a form. You don't have to sign anything. Right. But I just want to be aware of the fact that if we're giving you some housing resources, what the restrictions are going to be if you're going to have to register. Right. So right from the very beginning, we try to think about how do we personalize this. And we also have started asking them, like, tell me about your housing plan. Is it good, not so good, doesn't exist? How would you rate yourself as around money management, so that I can say to this money management speaker, hey, folks have said they're really good with money management, but they want to know more about investing or about getting a credit card. And then we do a short evaluation, which is sometimes like pulling teeth after each session. And we're able to make some changes right away. I always look through the evaluations to say, that didn't work this session. We need to change it next time. Or here are lots of questions that didn't get answered. And so we're able to make some changes. And then we, as you know, we type up all the evaluations and provide a summary to all the speakers so they can say, oh, this is what's working for my session. This is what people like. This is what I need to change for next time, and do that. Yeah. And we're very fortunate. I mean, Orange County and Durham and surrounding counties, we are resource rich. We have people, we have the resources, we have people willing to give up part of their evening or work time or personal time to come in and do a session. We provide snacks. That's about all we provide. We don't pay anybody. And I know that not all communities have the luxury, if that's the right word, of having all of those resources that you can call in to do that type of thing.
So what kind of feedback are you getting from persons, or do you even hear from anybody after they left? I mean, kind of, what is that like? And what is that? I'm sure that feels good, and before you answer that.
Yeah.
I mean, the housing, because that's always comes up as to that is the biggest issue for persons re-entering the community. And so how's that working for you? I mean, what do you do?
Yeah, I feel like the housing session and the session with DSS are the two most sobering pieces, because you leave prison and you automatically have, like, you're out, but there are certain things you just don't have access to. You may not be eligible for food stamps. You're probably not eligible for Section 8 housing. And so if I get out of prison, I'm at Orange Correctional. If I get out and my mom says, fine, I can go live with her, that's great. But if she's in Section 8 housing, we stand the risk of her losing her housing. And then that doesn't help me, right? If I've lived with her and now she's lost her housing. Right. So the housing piece is incredibly sobering. There's just not enough of it. They're not the right kind of it. And we always talk about, what about transportation, right? That's great if you have this wonderful facility, but it's not on a bus line. I don't have transportation. How do I get to my job? And then, of course, if you're going to have to register as a sex offender, it adds one more layer to it. So housing and DSS, I think, are the two that just have automatic challenges attached before you even leave the gate. Yeah.
And I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. I mean, that community members got to get involved, and that's also stepping in the booth, and making decisions during the election, because you want people to, you put them in prison and say, this is your debt to society, but then you come out, it's like, you still beat me. And the rules can change. I mean, we're talking, if you're not a violent offender or something like that, you should be able to live in some of these housing, the communities and stuff like that. I mean, you're continuing to beat down the families. You're not giving people a chance to rebuild relationships, rebuild a family, because some of these individuals, that they were the money makers. I mean, you may not have liked the way they made the money, but they were the money makers. And we need to recognize that everybody in prison was trying to keep food and lights on, and we need to understand that. And so, but I appreciate that. So tell me a little bit about some of the feedback you get from some of these folks.
Yeah, so we get it that, looking through the evaluations, and I always tell them, I'm going to read these evaluations right away. I don't want you to think that I'm going to put them in a file, because I have to remind myself that in prison, you're not often asked for your opinion. And so I have to be really careful to say, this is what we're doing with this information. I'm not sharing it with the world. Your name's not on it. Please don't put your name on it, but that I read it right away so that folks can know. And I do a little test. So early on, I don't think they believe that I read them, except someone put in there, I said, what would make this course better? What would you like to see happen? And they said, more food, a swimming pool, and dancing girls. So the beginning of the next session, I said, okay, a couple of housekeeping. By the way, we're going to keep doing snacks for the sessions, but we'll do pizza the last night. Does that work? And they said, yeah. And I said, and this was at a time when they thought that Orange Correctional might close. And I said, it sounds like Orange is staying open, so I think you'll have to just deal with that and no swimming pool. And I said, this girl doesn't dance. And the shock, it didn't take long to figure out who wrote that. And I said, I just want you to know that I read these evaluations. So so we get that kind of feedback. But I think probably one of the best ways we get feedback is when someone will say, so if I'm at Orange Correctional for something else and someone says, when are you doing the next pre-release course? I've heard really good things and I want to sign up. I just recently, I was there a couple weeks ago, and somebody who did the class already said, I want to do it again because I'm that much closer to leaving. And I think the information is going to have a different impact on me now than it did a year ago. So for me, that's that word of mouth that I can't market it. I'm not at the prison.
Yeah.
I need folks there to say it's worth your time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how, so you're doing this in how many facilities across the state?
So the pre-release course, we just do at Orange.
Oh, okay.
We've talked to some other facilities they've called, and said, hey, give us some information, but that's really the only place that we are doing it. Yeah.
Really? I don't know why I thought you were doing that. I mean, I saw in your bio, but for some reason I just thought it was more.
Yeah, we do Parent Day at several other prisons, but the pre-release course, it's strictly Orange.
Okay.
At least at this point. So.
Right.
Yeah.
So, another stat too. Well, what about the statistics for the risk of children of incarcerated persons also becoming incarcerated persons? Is there some data on that, or is there insight on that?
Yeah, so interesting timing on that. So it just happens to be, so we are part of, and will be part of a national campaign next month called See Us, Support Us, which we've been involved for several years now. The Osborne Association out of New York takes the lead on that. But every year the focus is a little bit different. It's all about supporting children of incarcerated parents, but it's one year it was all about what's going on in the school system and mental and physical health, relationships, visiting, that sort of thing. This year the focus is on eliminating stigma and misinformation. And they're just starting to get the materials up on the website. I'm really excited about that because for the longest time, there were some statistics or a statistic that if you had a parent who was incarcerated, and the number increased every time I heard it, 6, 7, 8, 9 times more likely to end up in the justice system. And I refused to use the statistic because I couldn't find the source for it.
Right.
Everybody said, go to this website, go here, go here. And it was just very circular. I couldn't find the source. And I said, I refuse to use it because the NNO is going to call and say, where'd you get that source? I don't have it. Well, what I was told is that source was given years ago in a congressional hearing. Congressional hearings are recorded. It was online. Someone picked up on it and said, we need to use the statistic for grant applications, for fundraising, because it sounds very compelling, like, oh, these poor little kids. So we don't ever use that statistic. And anytime I hear people kind of saying, oh, poor little kids, I'm going to jump in and say, no, amazing kids and their parents are incarcerated, right? We're not about patting little kids on the head and saying, oh, I feel sorry for you.
Right.
You are a kid in all the stuff that makes you a kid, and your parent is incarcerated. Now, we can look at is there an increased chance of you going to jail or prison? But I think we also have to look at what else is going on, right? If you are living in poverty, right? If you're living in an environment where there's a lot of crime in the home and in the community, whether that's your parent or someone else, if you're living in a society where there's racism, like all of these, like, let's look at that whole package and not say, my parent is in prison, therefore I'm destined to follow in their footsteps. We have lots of fathers at Orange Correctional whose kids are doing amazing and they're graduating from high school and they're great at sports and they're amazing writers and the list goes on. My concern is if we start to say, oh, you're destined to follow, it's like, then why bother, right? If you think I'm going to follow my parent, then you shouldn't even bother with me, because why waste your resources, put them towards somebody who you think is going to do a better job around that.
And I'm asking you all this question because I'm actually, I don't know whether the listeners have heard about the 2030, Reentry 2030, which is a voluntary initiative. Is it the council, state government, and Department of Justice, I think it is. I don't know whether it's Department of Justice, but it's voluntary for the states to join this initiative. And what they're doing is making it as easy to prepare individuals to return to their communities, whatever that looks like. Obviously, housing, getting your license and certificate. So that's voluntary. I think they have 5 states now. North Carolina was number 4. New York was number 1. And one is the second state. I forgot what the first state was, but the second state was Alabama.
Right.
And just Alabama's saying it's time to change. So that should tell you something right
Right.
there.
Yeah.
The reason I'm bringing that up is because I'm also trying to figure out how do we help these individuals coming back, because they're going to, like we talked about, interact with law enforcement, but also a lot of these individuals, and you will know better than I, that some of them are still living in poverty because the person who was kind of helping the family is no breadwinner's not there anymore. But their children are being successful. Their children are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're graduating from high school, may even be going to college, but there is some limitation as to their access to possibly further education. So my thing now, I'm thinking about, so why not become police officers? That's especially in small town Mayberry, US, they're paying $50K now.
Right. Right.
And so a kid coming out, 19-year-olds, it can make $50K sitting somewhere in Mayberry and not fighting crime, fighting sleep. And so that's why I'm kind of asking that, because people are forgetting that these individuals, the system, whatever, had an impact on their lives, the parent, but now the system can also now help them
Right.
be better and move forward. So tell me, what is a passion that keeps you going, doing this work? I mean, what just drives you to get up and keep doing this?
So before I get to that, I need to tell you, I don't remember it right now, but I actually just finished reading a book that I'm going to put in our book list where that is the case, where it's a main character and like a friend, the sister of the friend became a police officer and kind of struggling with what that means. Like, have you betrayed our community? But can you make some inroads to make things better? I'll send you the title. I can't remember it because we're talking about, but yeah, as you're talking, yeah.
Okay.
So I consider myself very fortunate. I feel like I'm a part of a small, some days feels very small group of people who loves their job. Like, I mean, obviously there are some pieces I think I could live without, but I love my job for a number of reasons. We did Parent Day at Randolph Correctional 2 weeks ago. You only have to do Parent Day once to see the fact that kids still love their incarcerated parents. And we do a day, 4 hours. There's no technology. So right there, that's huge.
Yeah.
We do arts and crafts and coloring, and they eat cookies and decorate cookies and eat lunch together and do pictures. And so for me, that's a little bit of fuel for the tank. But also, like, I presented at a conference today, there were probably 70 people in the room, and I bet 4 people came up after me and afterwards and said to me, I have never thought about the children.
Oh, wow.
And I say that every time. Like, my challenge to you is, if you haven't been thinking about the kids, please start. And if you have, invite someone else to think about how to up your game. And to have 4 people say,
yeah,
I've been doing this work a long time, and I've never thought about the kids and impact and what it means. And that when one person in particular was telling me that, I also got thinking about when I first joined. So we merged with Coastal Horizons about 8 years ago. When we first joined, I went to a staff meeting and I was like, oh, they're going to be super excited. I'm part of their team, and go through my whole little song and dance. And one of the case managers said, like, why are you here? We work with adults. Like, we don't work with kids. What is this? And his supervisor said to him, I don't really care. I shouldn't say this, but it doesn't really matter to me that whether or not you like kids. And you're right, we don't work with kids, but we work with lots of folks who are dealing with substance use. And if that relationship is stressful and not going well, or how the parent had planned, they're going to fall back on what got them through stressful times before. In many cases, that's back to using drugs and alcohol. So we want to think about this from the parent or adult perspective. We have to consider the kid's perspective, even if we're not interested in the kids, because it has an impact on decisions that parents make. Sometimes good decisions, sometimes not so good decisions. So I was reminded of that today when people said, I get so focused on working with the adults that I forget their parents, and even more so forget about their kids.
What's the is there an age that there's no age limit, obviously, folks. Is there what age can they be allowed to come into the prison? I guess there has to be for that, right? Or does that?
Yeah. So we're doing Parent Day. We usually do, and again, we were at Randolph last week. We've got 3 more happening this fall. We usually do 5 to 15.
Okay.
We have a little bit of wiggle room if they're 15, 16, And if they're 4 or 5, we'll do that. I generally don't do any younger than 4 because I don't change diapers in a prison. So I need kids who are 100% potty trained, even in a strange bathroom with people they've never seen before.
Exactly.
And the caregivers are not there. So mom or grandma, whoever's caring for them. And so I want to make sure kids are okay if that person's not in the same space with them. So it's usually sometimes 4, but more likely 5. So
that's the part we haven't talked about yet. So what's that relationship like, or your interaction with the kids and the families that come in? I mean, you're talking to the spouses, the girl, whatever it is, individuals in a relationship. So what is that conversation like? And have you been, do they also look to you to help identify resources for them? I know you're giving it to the person inside, but they may like, I need help too. So do you also get caught up in some of that?
Yeah, so that's a little bit of what we've been doing with Fresh. So as we've been setting up visits with families, and that's still a small number. Families have been fairly receptive. We've had one that we had to spend a little bit more time and answer her questions about why she should bring the children, what that was going to be like. For Parent Day, we've been very fortunate. We've had a few that have said, so I should say all Parent Days up to this point have been at men's prisons, which isn't necessarily something that we were deliberate in. It's just those are the prisons who have invited us in. So it's more than likely mom or grandmom who's taking care of the kids.
Okay.
And probably 95% of the time, there aren't any issues. A few times, in particular, the moms have said, I don't want to see him. Like, we're done. I'll bring the kids. And which I'll say, actually, you can't see him. So we don't have to worry about that. That's just, you'll be separate. You'll drop the kids off. Someone will meet the kids. We'll pass off to the parents. And actually, I've started, we do a little gift bag for the caregivers. We put in a gas card and some resources, just like local resources if they're going to be spending time in the area, but also put my card in there and let them know that if they need resources, they're welcome. Sometimes they do. It's been more where other families have called. Somebody gets my name from another provider who attended a workshop. And so they'll call and say, can you help me find these resources, or we need some counseling, or, X, Y, Z. So it's more that where people, I think, are just at their wits' end saying, we're trying to maneuver a system that really is just not designed for families. And we're trying to find some resources to help us get through all of this.
So, one of the things that, the getting driver's license, because obviously that's on all 3 of these states. I'm looking at their goals and objectives, and that, because that used to be one of the conversations. I was like, how is it that you're in a state prison and DMV can't run over there and get y'all license before y'all come out? That was a duh. And now they're trying to do that, because that's the biggest obstacle used to be, I don't have ID. I can't get down to DMV. So, but you were in the state prison, boo. And so hopefully you've seen some significant improvement in that arena, even before this 2030 reentry, have you?
So for a while there, DMV was going in, because I happened to be there one day at Orange Correctional when DMV was there.
Okay.
And what I loved is that it looked just like DMV, except for the magazines, right? It's just a whole bunch of people sitting around bored, waiting for the numbers to be called. I thought, well, this is a good real life experience, right?
Exactly, yeah.
There's no out-of-date magazines, but they stopped doing that. And now they're back doing some arrangement around IDs and driver's license. I don't still know all the ins and outs of it. That and Medicaid are the 2 things that they're working on. But you're right, if you don't have a driver's license, and it's not only that you don't have a driver's license, it may be that, it expired while you've been there, but also attached to that is the fines and fees. So it may be that my driver's license was suspended and I owe all this money, or I don't know how much I owe. And therefore, I'm going to play the odds and drive with this license, hoping that I'm not going to get caught. just sort of a spiral around that. And so we're very fortunate that one of the speakers for the pre-release course, we do an attorney panel the last night. We have one of the attorneys who's able to run reports to see, hey, this is what you owe for fines and fees. This is what you have to pay before you get your license. This is what you can get deferred until you get a job, whatever the particular, because people are trying to make decisions without having the full picture. Right. And I don't have a license can mean a lot of different things depending on your particular situation. So Yeah.
So let me make sure, did you say the persons you have at the end that do the panel, they're actually in real time able to tell these folks whether, about their license and stuff and what, wow,
Yeah, they
wow.
can't do real time, but they can run the report and then send it to them. So they'll get their name and social security and do that. Yeah. So again, we usually have somewhere between 2 and 4 attorneys. And what we do is we ask the participants of the pre-release course throughout the probably first 8 sessions, if you have any questions for an attorney, jot them down. I'll send them to the attorney so the attorneys can prepare. And what I'll say is, the attorneys are not here to help you file an appeal or, go out and get a bad judge, but reentry questions, driver's license, can I have a weapon? What about child support? The things that you're going to need to know when you leave here. And so then we feed them to the attorneys. And then when the attorneys come in, they can say, okay, you can't have a weapon. We can debate this, but you can't. So we need to get your driver's license. What about your child support? Those tend to be the big categories that people have questions about.
Wow.
Yeah.
And just an old story. It was a guy that I used to stop all the time because he didn't have a driver's license, right? And I'd stop him, and I got to the point I'd see him drive, and I just stopped stopping him because clearly he trying to get to work, right? And me piling up with $125 tickets was just useless.
Right.
And so I stopped messing with him, and we just kind of started waving at each other because it was like, he's trying to get to work, and people don't understand. They want to do the right thing, but you're not letting them. You ain't helping them out.
Right.
The system just continues to beat them down. So yeah, that's wow. I think that's great. So what do you? You and I see each other at the corrections reentry rehabilitation meetings. So what do you think about this 2030 reentry? I've been looking at, so I'm obviously paying a lot of attention now in the stuff. And I'm looking at North Carolina and I'm going, Dad, they got a strategic plan. Compared to everybody else, it's just a memo.
Right.
North Carolina's like, we're going to do this. And so what do you think?
So I just did a quick read of it when it first came out. I've actually have it printed and I've been carrying it around with me for weeks thinking I'm actually going to sit down and read it, right?
Yeah.
So you and I at that same meeting when I asked the question, which is there's virtually nothing in there about children and families. And I have followed up with them to express my concern about, especially because I had offered some thoughts when they were putting that together about children and families. And I know the answer is, child support, which is fine. Child support's huge, but child support's a very small percentage of cases, right? I'm going to guess that most of the parents that do Parent Day, the child support's not an issue. It's just not, either they have something informal or they're still with the other parent. So that is a little bit concerning to me. But I do love the fact that it's bold, right? And I think the things are achievable if folks stay focused and don't get distracted and say, let's get out of our silos, all the things that we want to say. But I love the fact that it's bold, that here are things that we can and should be doing so that folks get out, are successful, and they don't come back.
Yeah, so folks listening, if you're interested, it's called 2030, Reentry 2030, and I think this reentry2030.org. And I would really encourage you, because North Carolina, like I said, compared to everybody else basically got a memo. And because, as to, they have goals and objectives, but like she said, this thing is packed for North Carolina. And the fact that they actually say that we want to do X, and this is how we're going to measure X. They put the matrix down and all that, and kind of like you, Melissa, I've read it, and I did. I looked at all the things that they plan because I'm looking for interaction with law enforcement. There's nothing up there, and I'm also looking for conflict resolution training. Skills on how to communicate because I do the alternative to violence project, right? So which is in the state. They go in and do that training inside the facility. And so I'm thinking about contacting the North Carolina folks and said, look, and you might want to check this out and be a part of that. Get on that Hope University. And for those folks that don't know Hope University, it's inmates now in North Carolina and across the country now have access to the internet, limited access, but can get classes and certifications. So they have tablets that they can do this stuff on. So I didn't see a lot of that, and I'm planning on going back through and sending it to the APP North Carolina. So look, y'all might want to. But the only thing with that is, and I'll say this to them, and I've said this before, is they was created in the 70s on the civil rights as to how to, peaceful and all this, and the gist of it is light in all of us, right? And we just need to find a good enough. But there's still stuff they haven't really moved to this century.
Okay.
So, so I mean, it's all about building relationship and building this network with people in the space. And I think at some point you kind of have to, you can do that, but today's world, I think people need to kind of hurry and get to that. And just kind of figure it out. So I kind of wanted to just get your take on that. But yeah, I'm kind of doing like you, like what is it that from my lens, you doing it from your lens, that could definitely be beneficial and is definitely not in there yet.
Yeah.
And so I'm holding my breath. The guy that you and I saw, I sent him the film. Yep. He said he was going to have the meeting with the content committee and haven't heard from him. Okay. And I'm not, and I'm gonna let it sit, because I'm one of those believers in the universe. If it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. But I haven't heard from him at all. So, but yeah, take a look, folks, at the 2030 reentry.org. I think that's happening across the country, and it's voluntary and much needed. I mean, I'm definitely need to give people a chance to do it again and get out here and take care of themselves. So, I know did you say you are or not in women's facilities?
So for the Fresh program, we are at Anson Women's, actually Anson Men and Women's. But for Parent Day, we've never done one at any of the 3 women's faciliidties. Okay. So yeah, we will at some point, but we don't have anything scheduled.
Do the Fresh again one more time, because I just obviously you tell it, do that again, and is there a capacity to that to that?
Yeah. So Fresh is family reentry support and help. We're waiting on the second round of grant funding. So we've been at 5 prisons: Anson, Men and Women's, Johnston, Greene, and Lincoln. So the capacity is really it's interesting. We've struggled a bit with having full classes at the men's facilities. We've had very small classes, which are great. I mean, lots of one-on-one time, but the classes are really designed to be somewhat bigger. And so we've done some brainstorming about recruitment and maybe getting some people moved so they could be part of this class. Mm-hmm. But the women's prison, our facilitator, our case manager, just finished 2 classes. I think there was 12 in one, 9 in the other. And there's a 75-person waiting list right now. Wow. So it's really 2 extremes around that. And those are, Anson Men and Women's are basically on the same campus, and it's just really worlds apart. And what we're finding is, so I've been facilitating some of the classes at Johnston and Greene, is there's really this message to many of the fathers that you've been gone too long and or too many times, and you don't matter. Like, your kids are doing just fine. They don't need you in their lives. And so for them to take a parenting class can be difficult, because who wants to sit in a class thinking about, I can do this class, but I'm not going to be part of my children's lives, or why bother? I'm not important. And we've really had to think about, how do we send the message that, yeah, you do matter, and it's probably not going to be easy. And it may be that when you get out right away, you don't have a relationship, but there are some ways for you to develop some skills and a different perspective and maybe a different understanding going forward. But that has been a theme at the men's facility. So our Children's Place, Fresh, but also the community, I think we have some work to do to say dads matter.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Beyond creation, dads matter. So
dads matter.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Wow. Good. I mean, it's good that you got a waiting list. That's awesome. I like that.
It is. Yes. I mean, that's a nice problem to have, right?
It is a nice problem to have.
Yeah.
So what? I should have asked this earlier. When I go to Orange Correction, they're usually, what's the time for it? They usually say that they're going to be leaving the facility within X amount of time. So is there you got to be in this time frame to participate, or anybody can come, or you got to be getting ready to get out of within the next 6 months to 2 years? So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so usually we say within the next 18 months.
Okay.
So, we can be a little bit flexible, but beyond 18, people say, "Oh, I get out in 3 years." I'll say, then come back to us, because I'm going to give you information now that in 3 years is probably going to be outdated.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
you may not be in the mindset of thinking about release right now. I know you're thinking about release, but in terms of planning,
Right.
let's get you a little bit closer. And then it doesn't matter to us. We don't care where people are going back to. We don't care what they're in for a crime. Like, I don't ask why they're there. So I mean,
Right.
none of those are concerns. It's that
Yeah.
you need to be within 18 months from release. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that. I just kind of wondered. I kind of remember. Actually, I did not know that. For some reason, I was thinking it was 6 months to 2 years. I don't know
Yeah.
why two was in my brain. So cool. So good. So I think the work that you do is awesome. I'm glad to be a part of it. And
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, I come home and I'm like, I'm all the half. She's like, can you calm down? I mean, because they're just, I mean, it's raw. I don't have to watch my conversation. And these individuals, I mean, obviously I talk to folks about how to interact with law enforcement, but these individuals haven't interacted with law enforcement.
Right.
So I mean, that's a whole different lens.
Yeah.
And so it's a good conversation, and they're genuine. And if I just did that all the time, I would be happy. Because it satisfies me. I mean, it satisfies my soul to come in there and do that. Because those to me are the least of us. And so I kind of want to be a part of, maybe helping them be successful or whatever it is they need to do once they leave. So yeah, I'm just grateful that you kind of thought outside the box and saw I could be of service to you. And I've enjoyed every second. And I was looking at my notes too. I think 2018. I've been doing it, and I think
Yeah.
I've done 5 visits. I think it's been 5, because actually, nothing, for 2 years after
Right.
the pandemic.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, and then I've done, so yeah, I think it'll be, and then we're gonna do one in October, so it'll be 6.
Yep.
So yeah, and I just really I enjoy it. I sure do. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. Is there anything else you want to let us know about as to, if somebody's hearing this and they're like, man, I wouldn't mind being a part, is there volunteer stuff, or if they have a particular niche and a resource that they might say, would this be helpful? We'll have your contact information, but what other resources because you thought out of the box, you grabbed me. Is there some other stuff out there that you think might be that could be helpful in not just what we do at Orange, but just everything else that you're doing?
Yeah. So I will answer that. Before that, though, I also, this has come up a couple of times now, is that, I mean, yes, you are interacting with folks who have had the worst law enforcement experience, right? The worst outcome.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Wasn't I got stopped for a ticket or got stopped and warned about speeding, right? It was, I can blame law enforcement, right? That's not true, but I can blame, that's the worst possible outcome. And they are so receptive and honest with you, but also several of them have written that really you've helped them think about the conversation they need to have with their kids, right? I mean, they've already thought about it. They've probably already had the conversation, but I feel like this adds another layer or another reminder, like, yeah, I need to be talking about this with my kids. So really sort of a 2-generation, right? Like, you're helping them, but also they can share that with kids, grandkids, nieces and nephews, whoever else they're a kind of an adult to. Yeah. So I would say to folks, like, if there's something in particular that folks say, I have this to offer, I'd love to talk to them, whether it's the pre-release course, like we have snacks. I joke that we always have snacks, but that's a community group that provides the snacks, right? They provide them to us. We have a group that provides pizza at the end. But, thinking about additional resources, whether it's somebody as a speaker or somebody that says, hey, I have some resources that you could print. When they leave that pre-release course, they don't have a binder, but they have a full folder of resources. And so if somebody says, hey, have you thought about including this? I'd love to talk to them. And then, I do a lot of professional workshops across the state. So if anybody says, hey, I'd like to know more about kids with incarcerated parents, I travel. And so I'd love to be with folks in person, hybrid, virtual, to say how, what is your community thinking about how they can support kids who have that parent in prison or that parent who's coming home.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And I don't know if you want to tell the story, but when you said you travel, she does travel, and she travels in rural North Carolina. I mean, she's out in the backwoods, dark, no lights, traveling, trying to get to these facilities. And some of these facilities are definitely off the beaten path. And I think you said you got stopped one time back up in there.
I did.
Where are you going?
Yeah.
So when she tells you she's traveling, she is traveling probably some spaces some of us have never been in to do this work. Because obviously, as you can tell, she's very passionate about it, making a difference for our community members who deserve to come back and deserve to come back with information to start out successful, to be successful. So thank you. So any final words from you?
Just thank you and your audience for being part of this and what sounds like other really good conversations. So I appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks, but also would love to connect with community folks who might have something more to add to this conversation and or would like to talk further. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And again, 2030reentry.org, if you're interested in that, so you might want to start paying attention to that, what's happening and helping our returning citizens come back. And then also, I mean, we're in 2024 and it's election time. So these things are depending on who vote your values, and as to how you want to see people be in this earth. So as always, for those listening, thank you. And always stay safe, stay well, peace.